I was just driving home that afternoon off duty wearing cargo shorts, a Nickelback t-shirt, and holding an iced coffee like it was any other lazy Tuesday. Then I saw red and blue lights flashing behind me. For a second I thought one of my deputies was playing a joke. But when I looked closer, it wasn't a squad car, it was a bright cherry red golf cart with duct-taped strobe lights on top, swerving through a stop sign like it had some kind of authority. Behind the wheel sat a man in what looked like a Halloween costume, a shiny black polo, fake patches on the sleeves, and a clipboard in one hand. He was waving it like a weapon. "Pull over immediately. You're in violation of HOA Code 7 Alpha," he yelled. At first I laughed. The whole scene was too ridiculous. But then he reached for a pair of zip ties hanging from his belt like he actually planned to arrest me. That's when I calmly opened my glove box, pulled out my badge, let the sun hit the silver, and said, "You just tried to detain the sheriff of this county, buddy. Congratulations, you played yourself." He froze, eyes wide, face pale. I expected him to apologize, maybe mumble something about mistaken identity. Instead, he just muttered into his radio and drove off, tires squealing. I could have left it there. One deranged wannabe cop with too much free time. But something about that whole setup, the badge, the radio, those fake lights, felt too organized, too real. That night my voicemail was flooded. Neighbors telling me about absurd fines, threats, and punishments. One woman said she was charged $800 for excessive lawn decor. Another swore her dog had been put on probation for barking too loud. Someone else got billed a hose color compliance fee. I sat there listening, jaw clenched, wondering what kind of suburban dystopia I'd moved into. So I started digging. I showed up at the next HOA meeting disguised in jeans, a hoodie, and sunglasses. The clubhouse looked more like a courtroom than a neighborhood hall. Everyone sat silent, eyes forward, terrified to speak. When one of the board members read out Code 27A, the entire room went quiet. You could hear the air conditioning hum. I wrote it down on my hand. After the meeting, two members lingered by the door whispering. I caught something about Director X and full compliance action. That phrase stuck with me. I'd been a cop long enough to recognize coded language when I heard it. This wasn't about grass height or mailbox colors. It was control. I needed answers. So I went to see Nancy, former board member, the kind of woman who baked pies for the precinct every Thanksgiving. Years ago, her HOA fined her for flying the American flag on the wrong type of pole. When I mentioned Code 27A, she went white as chalk and dropped her fork. "You weren't supposed to hear that," she whispered. "That's internal. It means someone's become a liability. They don't fine you, they erase you." She leaned closer. "They ruin your job, your credit, your reputation, push you out quietly. Some people just disappear." I remember leaving that diner feeling cold inside. My badge suddenly felt heavier on my belt. I'd dealt with gangs, cartels, corruption, but never thought I'd find something that dark, hiding behind manicured lawns and HOA newsletters. That night I sat in my living room staring at my coffee table, wondering if I should just let it go. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe I'd blown things out of proportion. What if Nancy was exaggerating? What if the guy in the golf cart was just a harmless idiot? For a moment I honestly thought about packing it in, letting someone else handle it. I told myself, "Mike, you're off duty. This isn't your fight." But then I looked at the messages again, neighbors scared to take their trash out, afraid to talk, living under surveillance in their own homes. That's when it hit me, if I didn't stop this, no one would. So I set a trap. I painted my mailbox neon green, the ugliest shade you could imagine. I left my trash bins on the curb 3 days early. I even threw a fake lawn party with inflatable flamingos and a DJ blasting Nickelback. If they wanted a violation, I was going to hand them one on a silver platter. Didn't take long. 5 golf carts rolled up like a SWAT team. Uniforms, crisp radios, crackling zip ties ready. One barked, "Step outside immediately." I opened the door, took a sip of coffee and said, "Which code am I breaking today? Flamingo possession or noise pollution?" They didn't laugh. I tapped my phone live stream to the county prosecutor's office, already rolling. "You're impersonating law enforcement," I said. "That's 2 felonies and a civil lawsuit waiting to happen." Their leader's face twitched. "You're bluffing. I stepped aside just enough for my real badge and sidearm to catch the light. "You sure you want to test that theory?" Silence. Radios clicked. They backed off one by one. That night a note showed up on my porch. "Back off, Sheriff. This isn't your fight." They were wrong. This was exactly my fight. I started tracing the HOA's financials, following every dollar. Power always leaves a trail, and sure enough it led straight to City Hall, to a private server tied to the mayor's discretionary fund. When I read the name on the account, I nearly dropped my coffee. Eloise Harland, the mayor, my mother-in-law. Of all the people in this county, it had to be her. Eloise was the kind of woman who believed rules were sacred. She once lectured me for bringing store-bought cranberry sauce to Thanksgiving. Homemade or nothing, she'd said. Apparently that philosophy extended to running a secret suburban police force. We met for dinner at the town's fancy event hall. Soft lights, violin music, the perfect cover for a family war. "You crossed the line, Eloise," I told her quietly. She didn't blink. "This town needs structure." I gave it that. "I'm pressing charges," I said. She smiled, cold, patient. "Then you'd better be ready to burn everything down, Sheriff, because that's what it'll take." For a moment I doubted myself again. Maybe she was right. Maybe without control this town would spiral. Maybe the HOA, as twisted as it was, kept order. But then I remembered Nancy's trembling voice, the neighbors living in fear. No order built on fear isn't order. It's tyranny with better landscaping. So I called in help. Rick Meatball Mendoza, the barbecue pitmaster who'd gone bankrupt after HOA fines over a handmade picnic table. Carl, the drone nerd, banned from filming his own property. Marcy, the sweetest old lady in town, exiled from meetings for tone violations. Misfits, outcasts, people with nothing left to lose. We called it Operation Law and Order. While they distracted the HOA patrol chasing flamingos and gnomes across cul-de-sacs, I walked straight into the HOA office with a court-issued search warrant. The place was locked down tighter than a military base. Steel doors, biometric scanners. In the basement we found a bunker lined with screens showing live feeds of people's homes, bedrooms, backyards, living rooms. They weren't just enforcing rules, they were watching everyone, ranking them, grading their compliance. On one screen I saw my own house, my wife asleep on the couch, my file labeled "Threat Level Imminent, Neutralize." I felt my stomach drop. 7 arrests that night. Impersonation, unlawful surveillance, trespassing. Every last one of those fake officers taken down. But not Eloise. She was gone. Vanished. Until a week later. I was sitting in my truck outside the station around midnight when a black SUV rolled up across the street. She stepped out like a ghost. No makeup, no smile, just that same piercing calm. "You think removing me fixes this?" she asked. "You think people won't beg for order again?" I pointed toward the houses nearby, porch lights glowing, neighbors laughing, music drifting in the air. "They already chose," I said. Then the cruisers pulled up behind her. Quiet, efficient. Troopers cuffed her without a word. She didn't resist. She just looked at me and said, "You're only sheriff as long as they let you be. When the next threat comes, don't come crawling to me." She was right about one thing. Power never disappears, it just hides and waits. The HOA was dissolved the next week. People celebrated gnomes and flags everywhere, laughter echoing down the streets. But I didn't join them. I knew better. A few nights later I found a manila envelope slipped under my office door. Inside was a thumb drive. Video footage of a new meeting. Different faces. Same logo on the screen. HOA Restructuring Initiative, Phase 2. I just leaned back, sighed, and smiled. Let them come. This time the whole town's watching. And we still have a sheriff. Because when order demands obedience, sometimes the only law that matters is the one you make by standing your ground.